Hello and welcome to Analysis with me, Jonathan Steele. Egyptians have voted in the country's first presidential election since the Muslim Brotherhood and the ex-president Mohamed Morsi were deposed last year. Field Marshal Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who deposed Morsi and resigned from his army post to enable him to run for president, is expected to win comfortably and is standing against his sole challenger, Hamdine Sabahi, who came third in the 2012 presidential election. Sabahi's campaign team has complained of intimidation and arrest, and the Muslim Brotherhood has called for a boycott of the polls, as has the April the 6th youth movement. Voter turnout has so far been low, and the country declared today a public holiday in an attempt to make it easier for people to get to the polling stations. The results are expected shortly after polls close tonight. Joining me in the studio to discuss events in Egypt and the region are Mohammed Sudan, the UK spokesperson for the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, Sabah al-Mukhtar, president of the Arab Lawyers Association, and Peter Obon, the chief political commentator at the Daily Telegraph. Welcome to you all. But before we start the discussion, let's have a look at this video report.
Egyptians return to the polls for the second day to cast their vote for the next Egyptian president. Egypt's military-backed government and state media have done what they can to promote this election as legitimate. But the opposition see it as nothing more than a performance to rubber-stamp the man who has already been running the country for several months. This man is Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, the former army general who led the coup to oust President Mohamed Morsi in July last year, following the large-scale anti-Morsi demonstrations. With major backing from the army and state media, Sisi has gained an almost cult-like following amongst some Egyptians who believe he has rescued the country from the Brotherhood. He is widely expected to defeat the only other presidential candidate, Hamdine Sabahi, who came third in the 2012 presidential elections, which elected Mohamed Morsi to the presidency. And the results of the overseas vote, which show Sisi to have won 95% of the vote, supports this prediction. But results of opinion polls suggest a more mixed picture.
Well, we just had a set of research released from the Pew Foundation that suggested that once he talks to people face-to-face, his support is around the 50% mark, which is considerably lower than his supporters would like us to believe. Whether that will be translated into votes for his opponent, Hamdine Sabahi, really seems very unlikely, because his election seems inevitable for most of the population. His photographs and his posters and banners are all over the place. You can't really find one for his opponent in central Cairo, but you could probably find hundreds of them for Sisi. He already has the explicit backing of the army high command. He's got the implicit backing of most state institutions and the explicit backing of most private media outlets and, of course, state media. And so his victory does seem inevitable, even if underneath all the layers of hype and PR, Egyptians may be more split on him than first appears.
Those voting hope that the new Egyptian president can bring security and stability to the country following the political, social and economic upheaval of the last few years.
We want regulations so that all of those working in justice respect each other, whether it's the police, the army, the prosecution. There must be regulations to organise our relations so that we can achieve the noble goal of justice. It's the goal that we want for our citizens.
Yet despite calls for a big turnout by Sisi and a media which is loyal to the army, yesterday's turnout appeared lower than in previous elections.
It's clear that the turnout is low, but thank God there have been no problems so far.
Lower voter turnout may in part be due to a boycott campaign. The Muslim Brotherhood and other opposition groups, including the April 6th movement, called for the boycott in order to not give legitimacy to the election.
Our stance is based on principle, and our analysis and perspective of the political situation for several months and until now. The position is not recognising the election operation as a whole due to many factors. One of the factors is that the operation is unconstitutional. The political, economic and legislative environment does not encourage the holding of transparent and free elections.
The success of this boycott campaign will be determined once official figures are released later in the week. Casting a shadow over these elections are the major human rights violations committed since Sisi took control. The last few months have been Egypt's bloodiest in its modern history. Hundreds of Brotherhood supporters have been killed and over 1,000 have been sentenced to death, while sources estimate that around 20,000 people, including secular activists and journalists, have also been arrested and imprisoned. The Carter Center, who observed Egypt's parliamentary and presidential elections in 2012, have not sent observers to these elections. In a statement released last Friday, they said, Egypt's political transition has stalled and stands on the precipice of total reversal. The European Union has sent in 150 observers to oversee the process, but only in Cairo. The Egyptians who have come to cast their vote for Sisi today and yesterday appear to be voting for stability. But in a country with so many questioning the legitimacy of the entire process, stability may still be very far away. Sarah Say, Islam Channel.
Well, Mohammed Sunan, let me begin with you. I mean, why is Sisi expected to win so easily?
Actually, this is it's like a practical play or election. It's not a true election. And he is the one who ruled the country since the 3rd of July. Adli Mansour is just a picture, nothing to do.
The interim president.
Yes, yes, this is the interim president as well. He's just like an point in the picture. But the real ruler to the country since the 3rd of July, which the military coup started, then he is Sisi. Now he just took off his uniform and he ruled the country with the civilian uniform. And then he will win. He has to win. Why he killed all these people? Why he put more than 41,000 people behind bars? Not to give it to Hamdan Sabahi. Yes, he has to be the president. He is the leader of the military coup. Then he has to get the prize.
Well, Sabah al-Mukhtar, do you agree that there's no level playing field, that Hamdan Sabahi doesn't have a fair chance?
No, certainly I don't think there is a level playing field. Hamdan Sabahi played quite a role himself to depose Morsi, and now I think he's suffering from the same ills that he has caused. The Egyptian people have usually been accustomed to the same rulers staying there, from Nasser to Sadat to Mubarak. I think sometimes one wonders, why did the Egyptians have a revolution against Mubarak? Because they are replacing Mubarak with Sisi. The deep state is still there. Everything is in place. So why were all those people killed, whether from the army?
Well, that's an argument why many people might vote for Sabahi, though.
No, the problem with Sabahi was he has moved places. He has changed his status a number of times. He was a little bit with the Brotherhood. He wanted to be a nationalist. He was pro-Nasser. Both of them are vying to be successors of Nasser, that's Sisi and Sabahi. Hamdan Sabahi has not played the same role as Sisi did. So I think he doesn't have the credibility that he would. The people of Egypt have now been led to demonize the Brotherhood, the Islamist movement. Therefore, we have to have something else, and the only one who can provide it is Sisi, because he has the backing of the army. Egypt is run by the army, not even Sisi. So this is the one who can guarantee the stability as the ordinary people see the election. Hamdan Sabahi offers nothing to the Egyptian people. The Brotherhood were offering something, but people didn't want it, or they were forced not to want it. Sisi is offering the power of the army. Hamdan Sabahi has no cards to play at all, and his credibility is on the question. But nevertheless, even then, His people has not had the fair play. The media, they were not allowed to have access to the media as much as Sisi did. His people were arrested. Many of his supporters were arrested. They were pursued in various places. They were demonized in certain instances. A lot of them were accused of being supporters of the Brotherhood who have changed scene. And the same thing applies even to the 6th April youth movement. That is the scene in Egypt. I think that's why Sisi is likely to win rather than Sabahi.
Well, Peter, let me come on to you to the whole issue of turnout. Do you think turnout is important? And if the turnout is low, that shows that the president isn't really fully legitimate?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think if you look at Western democracies, the European elections, which have just come by, I mean, the turnout was low. People have the opportunity to vote. And I think one must welcome one thing, which is that there are elections, because we welcome elections. What's disreputable is that the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a political party of great moment and history in Egypt, have been banned from taking part because declared terrorists, which is outrageous. And it's not surprising, therefore, that if you say to the Muslim Brotherhood, which has the support of so many people, you can't take part, that the turnout is going to be very, very sparse.
Well, Mohammed, I mean, what is the Muslim Brotherhood going to do now? I mean, will they re-emerge, do you think, in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, or what can their strategy be?
No, I don't think that they're going to wait for this long time, because we're still peacefully struggling inside the country and outside the country. And now, for turnout yesterday, it's less than 7%. And today is nothing. Then what that means for all over the world who support Sisi and support the military coup in Egypt, that's nothing. That means that the Egyptian people dislike this kind of power coming against the will of the Egyptian people. He stole the will of the Egyptian people. 5 elections being killed. He kidnapped the real president of Egypt and his cabinet and prime minister and all the ministers, all the leaders. And we have more people being killed for nothing. And now the Egyptian people are not satisfied about this. Then they don't go to the election palace.
So what do you think will happen? I mean,
we still keep going to resist this kind of power which coming against the will of the Egyptian people, against the revolution of the 25th of January Revolution 2011. And why we uprised, why we did our revolution in 2011. It's against the military regimes. Now all the military regimes, which the deep state is coming back under the Sisi rulers. And all country right now, he is ruling the country since 11 months ago. The economy is going down. There's no freedom, no democracy, no free speech. And we have unbelievable court verdicts, sentenced to death, more than 1,200 people, all this stuff. And then where our country going to? Then I don't think that's a few months or something. And he has no agenda. He has nothing. He has any expert, any politician. He only a soldier. Just give an order and follow the order. This is all his experts.
Well,
what's going to do?
Thank you. What do you think, Saba, will happen with the economy? Because, I mean, people were, at one level, a little bit surprised when Sisi decided to be president, because he will now be saddled with the economy and having to do something, and it will be very difficult to make improvements, isn't it?
Just before I answer this, if I may, there are 2 issues which I think the Western media needs to pay attention to it. When you compare elections, first of all, there is a presumption that elections is democracy, equals democracy, and that is not correct if you don't have a democratic system. Second problem is that the media in Egypt is the one which is painting the picture of Egypt, and everybody presumes this is what it is. The public in Egypt is not how it is portrayed by the media. But to go back to your issue of the economic situation in Egypt, because of instability, and because of this upheaval, there is no investment, there is no inward investment, there is no possibility of sustaining the economy. The aid which was given by the Gulf states was loans, not aid. The international community, the IMF, is also providing loans, and Egypt is unable to service these loans. But nevertheless, they are claiming that they have this money, but the total population of Egypt, the total turn-up of economy, it's still going on a downward spiral. But one must also realize that in Egypt, the army is the economy. 40% of the economy of Egypt is in the hands of the army. This is the case in Turkey, this is the case in Egypt and a few other countries, Indonesia and what have you. So I think the economic situation, he's promising everything, but it's on the delivery, I think he will not be able to deliver.
Is he getting any productive investment as opposed to loans?
There is no investment whatsoever. The investment is still withdrawing out. The tourism is withdrawing out. The rest of the economy, it is all at a stagnant and stalemate. And it is really the general income, the services of the country, it's not there. They don't have the fuel, they don't have the food, they don't have the investment. The economy is really still on a spiral downwards.
Well, then in about a year or two, Sisi will lose popularity, presumably.
Absolutely. But by then, who's going to be the emerging power? The Brotherhood are not going to come back now, I don't think, because they have been demonized to such an extent through the media of Egypt that even ordinary people, aside from those who are committed, they began to believe that the Brotherhood as a political movement is a bad movement. They all support the principle of economy and what have you, and freedom and social services and all, but they are now reluctant to support the Brotherhood. So I think there is quite a long time before the Brotherhood can become again as a power. But certainly there is a great deal of discontent in Egypt with Sisi and with Sabahi, but the alternative is still not there.
Well, Peter, I mean, as a journalist, let me ask you about the media thing. Comment on what Sabah said about the media, how the state media is dominating the airwaves with all this pro-Sisi stuff. I mean, nowadays, people can see foreign satellite broadcasts. They have internet, they have Facebook and all the rest of it. They have other sources of information. Is it really possible for a government to control the media so absolutely now?
I think your point about that you can't completely control the media because of other sources of information is significant. But of course, nevertheless, the mainstream media plays a significant role in general in elections, in forming opinions. And so you add that to the fact that a large number of journalists have been locked up. I know we hear a lot about foreign journalists, but I'd just as much like to hear about the local Egyptian journalists who are in jail for pursuing that trade as journalists, and that's a real affront actually to the regime, that you don't have a free press in Egypt, and I think it's a point which the world needs to make to Field Marshal Sisi, if he wins, or Mr. Sabahi if he wins, is that Egypt is a great country. It's fantastic. It's one of the great countries of the world, one of the great histories. It's always been a great power in the Middle East. And if whoever wins these elections wants to be taken seriously by the world, doesn't want to be regarded as a pariah, then it's essential that the ordinary people who have been put in jail, including journalists, but also political activists, who all they've done is gone out and made political points, taken part in democracy, who are in jail, have to come out of jail.
By the way, today they just arrested the BBC journalist because they cover some issues in front of the election polls, and then they arrested them this morning.
Well, what is Al Jazeera doing? I mean, are their broadcasts sort of a bit less critical of Sisi now that they've got people in jail in Cairo, or is Al Jazeera an alternative voice that Egyptians can see that is giving a different picture?
Actually they have some people inside the country, and then they pieces with their camera, and then they send it by different ways, and then
but what is the tone of what they're saying? Are they,
you mean that the Al Jazeera journalists?
Yes, the Al Jazeera.
They say they have 4 people.
No, I know they're in jail. I'm talking about the Al Jazeera. If you're sitting in Cairo and you're watching Al Jazeera, you don't get a pro-Sisi line in suddenly.
No, they're still saying the truth. What's going on in Egypt?
They're still against the what's happening in Egypt.
Yes.
But the difference between Al Jazeera and the Western media is that because of the language issue, they have more access to local journalists, people who can telephone, who can speak on the telephone, send them messages.
Most of the Western journalists, they are afraid because they could be under arrest. And also I want to just add that till now, since the July 2013 till now, we have at least 3,000 factories shut down.
3,000?
Yes, at least.
Factories?
Yes, and then all the laborers, all the employees been employed.
Since last July?
Yes, John.
Well, why have they closed? What's it got to do with the
Brotherhood? Because the
Brotherhood?
people afraid, and then they smuggling with their money out of the country. The investors are afraid. There is no security, no safety, no stability in the country. And then all the foreign currency is going up. The inflation is going up. And then they cannot pay the salaries, people. There's no any stability.
And in addition to that, the import of raw material and goods and services is not available anymore because it's become prohibitively expensive for the Egyptian economy. So a lot of the industries, this is what I was saying, a lot of the industries have slowed down and have stopped, and and obviously there is a consequence, a social and cultural one, consequence as of that.
I mean, you're painting an extremely bleak picture, but I mean, there must be some Egyptians who genuinely want stability, who feel that the last 3 years have been too much turmoil and they want stability, particularly perhaps the Christian community. I mean, are Christians voting for Sisi in a genuine way because they were afraid of the Brotherhood and what it was doing?
The Egyptian people now, most of them who are voting for Sisi, and I think they will, the majority will vote for Sisi. The majority are basing their vote on the idea that Sabahi cannot present any credible alternative. This is number one. Number two, the Brotherhood had been demonized, that all the problems that Egypt has was due to Morsi and the Brotherhood. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not, but this is the general trend. Therefore, the Christian community usually in Egypt go along with the majority. So if the majority supports Nasser, they are with Nasser. If they support Mubarak or they support whatever, even when it was Sisi when Morsi and the Brotherhood were there, a lot of the Christians were in support of it because there was the general trend. So the Christians, and this is usually the norm of behavior of minorities in countries. Minorities don't want to stand alone. They generally move along with the tide.
But it was also true that...
I don't agree with this because, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, please.
But what happened in the 2012 election, all the majority of the Coptics, they gave their votes to Shafiq, not to Morsi. And that's the way, because they dislike the way of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is the reality. And now we have a big sign, say that Lord or Jesus will love you if you go support to Sisi. We have a lot of banners, Tawadros and the pictures and the Sisi pictures. And that's it. And then now Coptic, from the first minute in the military coup, they are beside Sisi. And they never, and they are a partner.
But, I mean, there were reports during the Morsi period of some attacks and so on Christian churches and so on. I mean, that has now stopped, or is that still continuing?
That was actually the deep state.
You think it was black propaganda?
It was the Mubarak lot who were doing that. But at the same time, if one recalls, when they had the coup d'etat, you had the Azhar president and the patriarch of the Christian movement, both of them sitting with him on the bench and supporting the coup d'etat. Yeah, both of them were supporting the coup d'etat. But as far as the Christians are concerned, in my view, they still, generally speaking, go as a minority. They don't want to swim against the tide, generally speaking. Now, how they do it now at the present moment, you presented, whether it's in the love of God or whatever other means, that's a different issue. But I think, generally speaking, the Christians are supporting, at the present moment, Morsi, I mean, supporting Sisi rather than Hamdin Sabahi.
Well, Peter, let me just come on to you, because I know you won't be able to be here in the second half. Relations with Britain. I mean, we had Tony Blair, the former Prime Minister, coming out very strongly for Sisi. I mean, is Cameron equally enthusiastic?
It's hard to be sure, but looking at it, the way the British government is conducting itself, the inability of the British Foreign Secretary, William Hague, to call what happened in July a coup d'etat, Muslim Brotherhood, to discover whether they're a terrorist organisation, suggests that they are very much on the side of the Field Marshal Sisi. And I think there's another clue, which is the fact that Alastair Campbell, over the weekend it's emerged that reportedly Mr. Campbell has been advising or helping the Sisi campaign.
He was Blair's press spokesman.
He was Blair's, Tony Blair, Tony Blair's press spokesman in Downing Street. And it's hard to imagine that Mr. Campbell would do that sort of thing without a tacit approval from the British government. But it looks a pretty convincing account, a very shocking account actually, that somebody who'd been that eminent in British public life is advising, taking such a partisan role in a campaign on behalf of somebody who's.
Well, if he was trying to give advice on how not to be a polarising figure, how to gather more support, genuine support, what should he be telling Mr. Sisi?
Well, what he should be telling and perhaps he is, I don't know what, I haven't had, but I hope he would tell Mr. Field Marshal Sisi that it's an outrage that so many people who are political activists, honourable political activists, are locked up. It's time that you declassified the Brotherhood as a terrorist organisation, allowed them to become, once again, a mainstream political party, that the journalists, both the local journalists, who sometimes I think get overlooked, and the Al Jazeera, the foreign journalists, could be let out of jail, and that Egypt could therefore, if he can take its place once again as a great respected nation with a voice in the world. That's the advice I hope that Mr. Campbell is giving.
I would suggest that he has two approaches to Sisi. Number one is that he would say all the things that has been said now, but he would do it in a diplomatic way because he knows it's not going to be bought, it's not going to be followed, but he has to say that he has said it. But then the second part of it is how to get him to achieve what he wants to achieve in terms of advertising, in terms of propaganda, in terms of the media, in terms of the the ties, the colors, how he votes, how he walks around, gets on a bike, etc., etc. All these things which makes him more popular. So I think that is the part that he will concentrate on. But he's being paid for it, so it doesn't matter.
Well, we have to end on that note. And as an enthusiastic cyclist, I'd love to see Field Marshal Sisi on a bike. So please stay with us for the second half of the programme, when we'll be looking much more at the foreign policy implications of Sisi's expected victory. Stay with us.